The ride started like any other, until the passenger whispered, "They're following us," and the old Uber driver's entire demeanor changed. What happened next turned a simple airport run into something no one expected. Welcome to Vaulted Secret. Before we begin this story of hidden identities and dangerous secrets, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button. The notification pinged on his phone at 11:47 p.m. Airport pickup. Terminal 3. Sarah M. 4.9 rating. Destination: Downtown Hotel District. Frank Morrison glanced at the screen, adjusted his rearview mirror, and pulled away from the gas station where he'd been waiting. At 68, Frank wasn't your typical Uber driver. Most guys his age were retired, watching TV, complaining about their backs. But Frank needed the work, or at least that's what he told everyone. The truth was more complicated. He drove because routine kept him sane. Structure kept the memories at bay. And the late-night shifts meant fewer questions, fewer conversations, fewer chances for his past to surface. His Honda Accord was clean, but lived in. No decorations, no air fresheners, no personal photos clipped to the visor. Just a phone mount, a dash cam he'd never mentioned to Uber, and a travel mug that never left the cup holder. Frank had been driving for 3 years now. Same routes, same routine. Airport runs paid best, especially late-night flights when business travelers needed reliable transport to their hotels. He knew every shortcut, every traffic pattern, every camera location between the airport and downtown. Not because he studied them, because old habits die hard, and Frank had very old habits. The airport was quiet at this hour. He pulled up to Terminal 3's pickup zone, where a woman in her mid-30s stood with a single carry-on bag. Professional attire, expensive shoes, a kind of tired posture that came from too many flights and too many time zones. She matched the photo on his app. "Sarah?" he asked through the lowered passenger window. She nodded, got in the back seat without the usual small talk. That suited Frank fine. "Downtown Marriott," she said, buckling her seatbelt. "Yes, ma'am." Frank pulled away from the curb, merging into the sparse late-night traffic. The route was automatic. Airport exit onto I-85, downtown in 25 minutes, barring any roadwork. He'd done it hundreds of times. For the first 10 minutes, everything was normal. Sarah checked her phone occasionally, but mostly stared out the window. That's when Sarah whispered something that changed everything. "They're following us." The words were so quiet, Frank almost missed them. Almost. But 30 years of training had taught him to hear whispers in windstorms, to catch movement in perfect stillness. His eyes immediately went to the rearview mirror. 3 cars back, staying consistent distance. A dark sedan with government plates he recognized instantly. 2 cars further back, another vehicle maintaining the same interval. Classic mobile surveillance, the kind most people would never notice. Frank's grip on the steering wheel didn't change. His speed didn't alter. But something fundamental shifted in the car's atmosphere. Sarah noticed it too. "You see them," she said, not a question. Frank's response came after exactly 3 seconds, long enough to assess, not long enough to seem hesitant. Black Suburban, 2 cars back, silver Camry behind that. They picked us up, leaving the airport. Sarah's sharp intake of breath told him she understood the significance. Most Uber drivers wouldn't have spotted a tail, let alone identified the vehicles and pickup point. "How long have you been driving for Uber?" she asked carefully. 3 years. Frank took the next exit, not the one that led downtown. "How long have you been running from whoever's in those cars?" Sarah was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried a different weight. "Since yesterday, maybe longer. I thought I lost them in Atlanta." Frank nodded, taking surface streets now, making seemingly random turns that actually followed a specific pattern, one designed to confirm and lose surveillance. What did you see that you weren't supposed to see? Documents, financial records, transactions that don't exist on any official books. She paused. I'm a forensic accountant. I was hired to audit some government contracts. Found money moving to places it shouldn't go, in amounts that don't add up. And you copied the files. How did you? Because that's what I would have done. Frank made another turn, checking mirrors. The tail was still there, but farther back now. Who hired you for the audit? Congressional subcommittee? Defense Appropriations Oversight? Sarah's voice was steadier now, like she was settling into a situation she finally understood. The files I found, ... They show someone's been skimming millions from black budget operations, moving it through shell companies, overseas accounts. Frank processed this information quickly. Black budget operations were his old world. Someone stealing from those accounts wasn't just committing fraud. They were compromising national security. The people following us, he said, they're not with the committee. No, they showed up after I submitted my preliminary report. My contact at the committee said the investigation was being transferred to another department. That's when I knew I was in trouble. Frank made a decision that surprised even him. Instead of dropping Sarah at the nearest police station or FBI field office, he pulled into an all-night diner's parking lot. Not the main lot, a side area behind the building where his car couldn't be seen from the street. Why are we stopping? Sarah asked. Frank turned to look at her directly for the first time since she'd gotten in the car. His eyes were calm, steady, but carried a weight that made her sit up straighter. Because, Sarah, you're going to need more help than a ride to your hotel. Sarah studied Frank's face in the dim light of the parking lot. There was something about his eyes, not the tired resignation she'd expect from an elderly Uber driver, but a sharp alertness that seemed to catalog everything around them. What kind of help? She asked. The kind that keeps you alive long enough to get those files to someone who can act on them. Those people following us aren't going to stop at intimidation. You found something big enough to kill for. How do you know that? Because I used to be the person they'd send to clean up situations like this. The statement hung in the air between them. Sarah felt her world tilt slightly, like she was seeing Frank for the first time. The worn jacket, the careful way he moved, the instant recognition of surveillance techniques. Your CIA, she said, was long time ago. Frank's eyes never stopped moving, checking mirrors, scanning the area around them. Officially, I retired in 2001. Unofficially, people like me don't really retire. We just get transferred to different kinds of operations. Driving Uber? Deep cover. The kind where even your handlers don't know where you are. Frank's smile was thin, humorless. Turns out, an elderly Uber driver is invisible. Perfect for watching certain people, listening to certain conversations, being in certain places when things happen. Sarah realized she was holding her breath. Are you still working for them? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Frank started the engine again. Right now, I'm working for you. The people in those files you found, they're not patriots. They're thieves using national security as cover for personal enrichment. That's something I spent 30 years fighting against. He pulled out of the parking lot, but instead of heading toward downtown, he drove deeper into the industrial district. Sarah noticed his driving had changed, more decisive, taking turns that seemed random, but clearly weren't. Where are we going? Somewhere we can make some calls without being overheard. 10 minutes later, they pulled into an abandoned warehouse district. Frank drove around to the back of a building that looked like it had been empty for years. But when he got out and walked to a service door, he produced a key. Safe house? Sarah asked. One of many. This city has more ghost facilities than you'd believe. Frank opened the door, checking the interior before motioning her inside. Old habits. The interior looked abandoned from the outside, but inside was different. Clean, functional, communications equipment that looked government-issued but carried no identifying marks. Sarah realized this wasn't just a safe house. It was an active operation. "Frank," she said slowly, "who do you really work for?" Frank was already at a secure phone terminal, entering a series of codes. "That's complicated. Let's just say there are people in the intelligence community who don't like it when their colleagues go freelance with taxpayer money. Your internal affairs, for spies." Something like that. The phone connected, and Frank's voice changed completely, crisper, more authoritative. "This is Shepard. I need an immediate priority channel to Deputy Director Harrison." Sarah listened as Frank spoke in a kind of shorthand she didn't understand, referencing case numbers and operational designations that meant nothing to her, but clearly carried weight with whoever was on the other end. Within minutes, he was connected to someone with enough authority to make decisions. "Sir, I have a package that needs immediate protection." Financial forensics specialist stumbled onto what looks like large-scale appropriation of black funds. Frank listened for a moment. "Yes, sir. I've seen preliminary evidence. This is legitimate." While Frank talked, Sarah explored the safe house. It was sparse but well-equipped. Maps of the city with locations marked in red. Files cabinet that were certainly locked. A weapons locker that was definitely locked. And photos on a bulletin board. Surveillance shots of people she didn't recognize, but who looked important. One photo caught her attention. A man in an expensive suit getting out of a government sedan. She'd seen him before, in the files she'd copied. His name was connected to several of the suspicious transactions. "Frank," she called quietly. He finished his call and walked over. "What is it?" "This man. He's in my files. Deputy Assistant Secretary Morrison, Defense Department." Frank's expression darkened. "Morrison's been dirty for years. We just haven't been able to prove it. I can prove it. The files I copied show direct transfers from defense accounts to companies he owns through shell corporations. Millions of dollars over the past 3 years. How did you get access to those records?" "The Congressional Committee gave me full audit authority. I don't think they expected me to dig as deep as I did." Sarah pulled out her phone. "I uploaded everything to a secure cloud server before I left Atlanta." Frank studied her for a long moment. "Sarah, what you found could bring down a network that's been operating for years. These aren't just thieves. They're traitors. And they will kill you to protect themselves. Then what do? We get you somewhere safe, and we get those files to people who can act on them without being compromised." Frank walked back to the communications equipment. "But first, we need to make sure the people following us don't find this location." He pulled up a computer terminal and began accessing what looked like surveillance feeds from around the city. Sarah watched as he tracked the vehicles that had been following them. "They're good," Frank said, "but they're not as good as they think they are. They've been watching my car, but they haven't figured out where we went. How long do we have?" "Until morning, maybe longer. Depends on how many resources they're willing to commit." Frank turned to face her. "Sarah, I need you to understand something. Once I make the next call, there's no going back. You'll be under federal protection, but you'll also be a target until this is resolved. And if I don't, you'll be dead by tomorrow night." Sarah looked around the safe house, at the evidence of a hidden world she'd never known existed. A world where her simple audit had uncovered something that threatened national security. A world where her Uber driver was actually a deep-cover intelligence operative. "Make the call," she said. Frank's next call was to a number Sarah was sure didn't officially exist. He spoke for 20 minutes in that same coded language, providing details about her findings, the surveillance they'd encountered, and the scope of what they were dealing with. When he hung up, his expression was grim. "It's worse than we thought," he said. "Morrison isn't working alone. The money you traced is part of a larger network. People in defense, intelligence, even congressional staff. They've been skimming from black operations for years. How much money are we talking about? Conservative estimate? 200 million, maybe more. Frank pulled up a chair across from her. Sarah, what you've uncovered isn't just fraud. It's systematic theft from programs designed to protect national security. Every dollar they stole is a dollar that didn't go to legitimate operations. Operations like yours? Operations like mine. Frank's smile was bitter. You want to know why I'm really driving Uber? Because budget cuts eliminated half the deep cover positions. We had to find our own funding, our own cover stories. Some of us retired legitimately. Others found creative ways to stay operational. And the people stealing the money? They're the reason we don't have official funding anymore. They've been diverting money meant for operational budgets into their personal accounts. Frank's phone buzzed with an encrypted message. He read it quickly, his expression growing more serious. We need to move. My people have identified at least 6 vehicles converging on this area. Somehow, they've tracked us. How is that possible? Frank was already moving, gathering equipment from around the safe house. Your phone. Even with location services off, it can be tracked by people with the right equipment. He handed her a device she didn't recognize. Encrypted communications only. Your old phone stays here. They were out the back door within 2 minutes, moving to a different vehicle Frank had parked in an adjacent building. Not his Honda, a nondescript SUV with government plates. This is your real car, Sarah said. One of them. Frank started the engine. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. When you first discovered these financial irregularities, who did you tell? My supervisor at the accounting firm. Then the congressional committee contact. Names. David Chun at the firm. Congressman Bradley's chief of staff, Jennifer Walsh. Frank processed this information while navigating through back streets Sarah didn't recognize. Chun's clean. We've worked with him before on legitimate audits. But Walsh ... He made a call using hands-free equipment. This is Shepard. I need immediate background on Jennifer Walsh, Chief of Staff to Congressman Bradley, House Defense Appropriations Subcommittee. The response came back within minutes. Frank's jaw tightened as he listened. Walsh has been on the payroll, he told Sarah after ending the call. Shell Company consulting fees for the past 2 years. She's been feeding information to Morrison's network. So they knew about my audit from the beginning. They knew, and they let you do the work because they needed to know exactly what you'd found. Frank turned onto a highway on ramp. Sarah, they were never planning to let you leave Atlanta alive. The only reason you're still breathing is because you got on that plane before they could stop you. Where are we going now? Somewhere they can't follow. And somewhere we can get those files to people who can act on them immediately. 20 minutes later, they pulled into what looked like a private airfield. A small jet was waiting, engines running. Men in suits who clearly weren't flight attendants were positioned around the aircraft. Federal marshals, Frank explained, seeing her expression. You're going into witness protection until this is resolved. What about you? Frank parked the SUV and turned to look at her. I'm going back to work. The real work. But you said you were retired. I said I officially retired in 2001. Unofficially, people like me don't retire. We just change assignments. Frank's smile was the first genuine one she'd seen from him. Morrison's network has been stealing from operations that protect this country. That makes it personal. As they walked toward the aircraft, Sarah realized she still didn't know Frank's real name, his actual background, or who he really worked for. But you said you were retired. I said I officially retired in 2001. Unofficially, people like me don't retire. We just change assignments. Frank's smile was the first genuine one she'd seen from him. Morrison's network has been stealing from operations that protect this country. That makes it personal. As they walked toward the aircraft, Sarah realized she still didn't know Frank's real name, his actual background, or who he really worked for. Frank handed her a business card, plain white, with only a phone number. When this is over, if you ever need a ride that's more than just a ride, call that number. Sarah looked at the card, then at Frank. What's your real name, Frank Morrison? No relation to the Deputy Assistant Secretary, in case you're wondering. And what do you really do? Frank's eyes carried that weight again, the one that spoke of years and shadows. I drive people where they need to go, he said. Sometimes that's the airport. Sometimes it's somewhere safe. Sometimes it's somewhere justice can be served. Sarah boarded the plane with Frank's words echoing in her mind. As the aircraft taxied for takeoff, she saw him through the window, walking back to his SUV. Not an elderly Uber driver anymore, but someone else entirely. Someone whose real work was just beginning. The plane lifted off into the night sky, carrying Sarah toward safety and toward the moment when her discoveries would bring down a network that had betrayed everything they'd sworn to protect. But Frank Morrison, whoever he really was heading back into the shadows, back to the kind of work that kept the country safe from threats both foreign and domestic, because some people never really retire from service. They just find new ways to serve. 3 months later, the indictments came down like dominoes. Deputy Assistant Secretary Morrison, Congressional Chief of Staff Walsh, and 14 others were arrested simultaneously in coordinated raids across 3 states. The financial evidence was overwhelming. Sarah's audit had provided the roadmap, but additional investigation revealed the network was even larger than initially suspected. The news reported it as the largest defense appropriations fraud in U.S. history. What they didn't report was how the investigation began, or who had protected the whistleblower who made it possible. Sarah watched the news from her new apartment in a new city, with a new identity that would eventually become permanent. The Witness Protection Program had relocated her to Seattle, where she now worked for a different accounting firm on decidedly boring corporate audits. She still had Frank's business card. 3 months after the arrests, she used it. "Shepard," came the familiar voice. "It's Sarah. I saw the news. Good results all around. How are you settling in?" "Good. Quiet? Normal." She paused. "Are you still driving for Uber?" Frank's laugh was warm, genuine. "Among other things, the work keeps me busy." "Frank, can I ask you something?" "Shoot." "How many other Uber drivers are there like you?" The pause was long enough to be meaningful. "Enough," Frank said finally. "This country has more people watching over it than most folks realize. Some wear uniforms, some wear suits, some wear coveralls and drive older Hondas. And some drive Uber. Some drive Uber." Sarah looked out her apartment window at the Seattle skyline, thinking about hidden networks of protection, about ordinary people doing extraordinary things in complete anonymity. "Frank, yeah? Next time I need a ride, ... Call the number," he said. "Someone will be there." The line went dead, leaving Sarah with the knowledge that somewhere out there, Frank Morrison was probably getting another ping on his phone. Another passenger, another destination, another opportunity to be exactly who someone needed him to be. Because the best protectors are the ones you never see coming. And sometimes they're just your Uber driver. This story was a work of fiction, but it honors the real men and women who serve in ways we may never know, in places we may never see, protecting freedoms we sometimes take for granted. If this story moved you, remember to subscribe to Vaulted Secret for more tales of hidden heroes and quiet courage. Where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments and share a story of someone who helped you when you needed it most.